he got to leave office with about 120,000 red crayons because we sent them in, Crayons for Education, to stop the cuts. That was me. That was my group. That's where we began. So I have experience at the Capitol. I have connections out there. And if I'm elected, I'm going to not say, well, that's the state, we can't do anything about it. I'm going to beat on those walls until something changes, because it's past time for it to change.
Thank you. And Mr. Jones, you'll be first to respond to the next question. Like many school districts across Colorado and the United States, Douglas County School District has persistent race and ethnicity-based achievement gaps. What measures do you support to close those gaps?
Actually, an excellent question. For all of our students, they deserve to have the best education. They deserve to have the quality, and when it comes to every child should be just looked at as an individual that has specific needs, should receive equitable access to all of our programs. And I would be pushing and stressing that we need more outreach to a lot of the families in some of the underserved communities here in Highlands Ranch. I spent some time in Sedalia Elementary, where we have a very large portion of those kids coming up from immigrant families that are housed in either apartment complexes or hotel rooms down in the Castle Rock area. Now those kids absolutely deserve every single resource that we should provide for any and every one of our kids. And so it is continued outreach, it's continued listening, and I think that what we're seeing in some of the test scores, that some of their scores are actually coming up as well. Science of reading is having an impact even on our special needs children and our English language learning kids. We need to keep improving on that.
Thank you. Ms. Meek?
Yeah, what a great question. Our district did a lot of work years ago, which actually led to the development of our educational equity policy that we passed when I first started the board. That policy was really dedicated to ensuring that we close those gaps in both achievement and also opportunity gaps. And so that policy was put in place, but policies are only as good as their implementation, right? So that policy is being implemented right now under the current board leadership. And as a board, our job really is to set those policies, but then to hold the district accountable. And so the accountability reports that I mentioned earlier, those reports come to us, and we ensure that that information is disaggregated, meaning breaking it out so we can identify those gaps. So those are the kinds of reports that we have been asking for and receiving in recent years. The engagement opportunities that we mentioned also, we sit down with students and we have conversations with students, and we hear firsthand what is keeping them from having the opportunities that they need. And we utilize that to go back to our policies. And our achievement scores have surpassed pre-pandemic, but most importantly to this question, they are closing those gaps that have been identified.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson?
So my professional experience is working with underrepresented populations. And what I've learned, and what many of you might be aware of, is that there are systemic factors at play that cause disparities in outcomes. And how do we address that? Well, we use a lens of equity. When we're considering policy, we need to look at desired outcomes and how it looks for all of our student groups. And I think that if we focus on what the mission of our district is and what it calls on us to do, is that there's an educational foundation that allows each student to reach his or her individual potential. So every time we're making decisions, every time we're deciding something new, that we are systematically thinking about every single student group that is going to be impacted by that decision. I think it's great that our district's performing well and that we're seeing improvements across all groups, but we have room to do better.
Thank you. Mr. DiCarlo?
I recognize one student group. I refuse to break people down by race or anything else. I grew up in South Chicago, in a very diverse part of the world, believe it or not, and we grew up colorblind. I don't believe you group kids by ability, and you teach to the weakness and you make it into a strength. But we're too busy pushing identity politics from the universities all the way down to kindergarten. And I think it's a terrible, terrible thing to do to a child. I don't look at somebody and see race. I look at somebody and see possibility. And I want to find the individual possibility in these kids and lift it. The more we talk about systemic reasons, the more we enforce them as being there. I don't believe they're there. I believe that if we look at people as people and quit putting layers on the onion to have to try to peer it through, we look at people as people, guess what? They're going to behave as people. And their achievement will rise, and they will get along. Do unto others as you would have done unto you is a pretty simple concept. We keep trying to divide people and get away from that concept. And so the result is predictable. I don't look at achievement gaps by anything other than kids are kids, which kids need help, and you help those kids.
Thank you. Mr. Geiger.
The Douglas County School District is currently being sued in federal court on a civil rights action because a number of our students faced a horrific level of racist bullying in 2 of our schools. And according to the lawsuit, which I won't prejudge, our response was not good. See, I don't agree that we're creating these divisions. They exist. And denying that they exist and denying that they exist in the greater society prevents us from addressing them. Of course we have to address every kid's needs. Of course we have to identify them individually. But to deny that there are other issues, economic issues, race issues, language issues, cultural issues, that impact groups, we have to acknowledge that. We have to look at it. We have to see if maybe our training is insufficient. We have to look at whether or not we are teaching our teachers that we come at different students in different ways. I understand it's become very popular to be concerned about CRT and that kind of stuff. That's not what's going on. What's going on is that we are doing what the federal government requires us to do, and that's keeping track of underserved communities and trying to figure out if there are groups that need additional resources to do better. We can do that. We can't do it by pretending that those issues don't exist.
Ms. Meek, this question is for you to start with. What is your experience with public schools and charter schools, and what are the pros and cons for public charter schools in Douglas County?
So my experience with public schools and charter schools, so as a board member, it is our job to grant the contracts for charter schools. So we have 25% of our students here in Douglas County that attend charter schools. So as a board member, we stay on top of authorizing those charter schools, approving charter schools. Since my tenure on the board, we have authorized the charter schools that have come back for authorization, visited different charter schools as well to learn and gain experience from their academic programming and their successes. The Charter School Act was passed, I believe, in 1992, and we, under that act, the whole reason and idea is to help serve at-risk students and then to share those learnings across different schools. So I take that really seriously, wanting to understand what we can learn from our charter schools and how we can benefit and work together. So my experience is really working with them as a board member, and my children attended neighborhood schools and choice schools throughout their time here in Douglas County, but I have a very positive experience working with our charters. Thank you.
I think this pro-con mentality with public schools and charter schools really stems from just the approval process of charter schools. And like Susan just mentioned, we follow state law when it comes to charter schools. There's a process that goes, they apply, every application has to be reviewed for merit. and then the board makes its recommendation, or decision, I should say. Bottom line, all schools serve the children in our district, right? And we have opportunities to send our kids to schools that fit our child's needs, individual needs, and I think that's a great thing. I don't really have any cons on this topic. I think it's just a misconception in the public.
I love choice, so I think it's great that we have so many charter schools and that we have a strong traditional neighborhood brick and mortar school presence. I think it's outstanding, because that means if school A isn't working for a child, the parent has option B, C, D, I mean, go on down the line. Because we only get one chance at educating a child. So we want to find the environment that best fits that child. So the more choice, the better. I don't find a con to it at all. I think folks that may still have a con mentality may stem back a decade or so ago, when this idea that the charter schools were the bane of the traditional brick and mortar's existence. And that was a widely held opinion, unfortunately. I was on the DAC at that time, and they're not. They are nimble, and it's a crucible where you can try things very quickly. If they don't work, you can switch. What I'd like to see more of is some collaboration between charter schools and our traditional brick and mortar. What's working best? And let's get that out of the charter into the rest of the system. I think that's the way we do things.
I will admit, I'm one of the people who had to grow on this. When I started the Long Range Planning Committee 9 years ago, I didn't know a lot about charter schools. I was then educated by some really smart, good people. And I've gone to charter schools and I've talked to them about their needs in terms of capital needs. And when we started the Long Range Planning Committee, never addressed the capital needs of charter schools. And I became convinced as the chairman, and a lot of people on the committee were, that was something we had to change. So it's been an honor for me to work with charter schools, to talk about how they're part of the long-range plan for the district. Charter schools are public schools. They educate 25% of our kids. I have had cases where parents could not agree on anything else except their kids were always going to go to this particular charter school, because for them, they were convinced that's what was best for their kids. That's the joy of charter schools. Because they get to select parents who are involved, they are able to provide that kind of great education. I think one area that the neighborhood schools can learn is how to encourage that cooperation, how to encourage that parental involvement, how to create opportunities for parents to become engaged in every single school. I drive by any school and I see the parents out there building the garden like they do at Flat Canyon, or painting sidewalks like they do at Cougar Run. I think that speaks well for all of the kids. And I think charter schools have in many ways led the way on that. And I appreciate that. The kids there do well. So I think charter schools serve a big purpose.
Well said, Brad. And as a charter school parent, somebody who 2002, all three of my children started K through 8, went all the way through K through 8 at Flat River Academy, which is just a gem of a school. And what we quickly realized, because this was our first experience, we moved from California, and this was our first experience with the public schools here in Douglas County, and we were able to get into Flat River Academy right away, but it was that expectation of volunteerism that was what I call the secret sauce. At the graduation of my third child from Flat River Academy, after 16 years of being there, after having been on the governing board for 3 years, 2 of those as the president, I was given the opportunity to address the children and the families. And I had to practice my speech at least 35 times because I cried every time I did this. And it was, when I looked at the kids, I said, you might think that this was a burden on us to spend time volunteering in our school. And then I looked at the parents and I said, but truly, this was a moment that we were able to steal back minutes of their day that we gave up when we dropped them off that first time in kindergarten. Our charter schools do give us an example, I think, of how many neighborhood schools can increase volunteerism and with that become truly engaged parents. And it's a beautiful thing to see and witness.
Thank you. So we're going to switch up the question format with the next question. Candidates, I'm going to ask a series of questions. And all you have to do is answer with a simple yes or no. And so we'll start with Ms. Thompson, and this will be true for all of this lightning round. Ms. Thompson will always start, and then we'll just come around the table and go right back down the table. All right? So the first question is this. Do you commit to attending board meetings, performing the duties, and meeting the expectations and requirements of directors? Ms. Thompson?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. DiCarlo?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I will continue to do so.
Second question. Do you commit to the district paying competitive wages to attract and retain well-qualified teachers and staff? Ms. Thompson?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
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 Recent lawsuits regarding district actions have cost the district hundreds of thousands of dollars and prompt the next two questions. Do you commit to complying with the laws of effective governance, including Colorado's Sunshine Law and the open meeting requirements? Ms. Thompson?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely yes.
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 And do you commit to educational equity and zero tolerance for unlawful discrimination, including discrimination based on race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation? Ms. Thompson?
Yes, absolutely.
Of course, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Ballot issue 5A would increase district taxes by $66 million annually to increase teacher and staff salaries and school security, and would also make the district's expenditures subject to oversight by a citizens committee. Do you support 5A? Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
No.
Strongly.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ballot issue 5B would increase district debt by $484 million and increase district taxes by $55 million annually to pay the debt with a mill levy. The money would be used for educational facilities and subject to oversight by a citizens committee. Do you support 5B? Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
No.
Strongly.
Yes.
Yes.
This last question is not a yes or no question, and you will have 30 seconds to explain your answer. So relative to other Denver metro area school districts, is Douglas County School District doing well? And why or why not? So Ms. Thompson?